Hey everybody, I'm Trish Christ. In this episode of Our Nashville, NECAT and our super crew of teenagers spend some time with Gideon's Army. Founder Rashida Fatuga and her team are going to show and tell us all the important things they do in our community.
Let's circle up.
Let's do it. Show me.
Our Nashville.
It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville.
We all know how to talk about our organization during meetings, but what about the chance encounter of a lifetime? You never know who may share your next elevator, notice your logo on a notebook or a tote bag, and ask what you do. What's the clearest, most persuasive thing you can say in a short elevator ride?
Gideon's Army is a group of really fun people who care deeply about each other. We are students, parents, elders, just community members who care about our kids. We focus on community engagement, systemic transformation to reduce as many health inequities that we can within the community. And we focus directly on guiding our kids on a secure path to success.
I am so glad to have you here, for one thing. I just want to say that first. I'm so pleased to have you here. And I have so much to learn from you. I say that in the singular, I, me, and people watching this. We have so much to learn from you, Rashida. So thank you. I want to say on a personal note too, thank you for the last couple of years as I've gotten to know you some. You have taught me a lot of things, whether or not you knew you were doing it, and you have included me and informed me in ways that I needed, and I would not have had that had you not crossed my path in the world, and thank you.
Thank you.
For example, I had not heard the term restorative justice before you and I spoke on the phone a couple of years ago. I didn't know what it was. And even though its name kind of explains what it is, being around you and seeing you with teenagers and with concerns in the community, I have learned a greater understanding of what restorative justice is. And today I want to learn more and talk more, have it articulated more. Let's start with the super simple. Let's talk about what is the definition of restorative justice.
Okay. Well, restorative justice is an ethos. It is a way of life, a philosophy that is steeped in deep caring for the community that you live in, for your family, and community could be your work environment, it could be your neighborhood, it could be your place of worship, but it's deep caring and a building of relationship and being personally accountable when harm is caused, focusing on how to make things right, how to collectively make things right, bringing everybody together who's been a part of a harm that's been caused, the person who's been harmed, the person who's caused the harm, and even people from the community who may have been secondarily affected, coming together and saying collectively, what can we do to make things right? How can we deeply care for the person who's been harmed, but then also creating space where the person who's caused harm can rebuild trust within the community and have space to be personally accountable and actually do things to facilitate the healing and to make things right in a situation.
That's huge and beautiful, and in some ways should be so obvious to human beings to just do. Unfortunately, we got out of that groove if we ever had that groove.
Mm-hmm.
Who coined the term and who developed the techniques around restorative justice? What time frame and who are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
It's big.
That is a very big question. Restorative justice is a very indigenous practice. It's a very indigenous philosophy and way of life. I think it's something that we do very naturally, but we don't realize that we do it. So if someone hurts you, you want something. You want them to acknowledge your pain. You want to be heard and understood, and you want them to do something to make things right. If you, on the other end, are the person who has caused harm, then instead of being thrown away, told that you're worthless or useless or, you know, not redeemable,
You didn't
not
act right, you
welcome
don't
in
get to play anymore.
society, right? You want the opportunity to do that same thing even when the roles are reversed. You want the opportunity to be able to make things right. Now, there's some people out here who just don't care, who don't want to make things right, and there's a saying that in a tribe in Africa, I don't know which tribe it is, it says that when someone causes harm, they bring that person to the center of the village and everyone surrounds that person and they remind that person of their goodness.
Wow.
They bring them back to remember the essence of who they really are, to get them on the path that they truly want to live. That is where restorative justice comes from. Now, you have people like Howard Zare, who has been a wonderful mentor to me, and I appreciate him so much, who've taken that indigenous philosophy and looked at it in comparison to our current criminal justice system and has created like a restorative justice way of living that kind of is an alternative to criminal justice. And there's so many others. There's so many other people who are out there who are working on it. So, you know, who is the founder could be possibly debatable, but Howard was definitely my personal mentor who took the time to work with me and to teach me so that I could be here and do this work here in Nashville.
Is it safe to say it's a 20th century concept in its formality?
Yes.
Okay. What inspired you to form a nonprofit in order to share and apply techniques from restorative justice?
Okay. When I was a school teacher in Metro Nashville Public Schools, I was a teacher for 7 or 8 years in Metro. I taught 4th grade at Carter Lawrence Math and Science Magnet School. That was one of my schools. And I was there for the longest. When I was teaching my students, like they loved being in school. They loved learning. They loved like the critical thinking. And when problems arose, I didn't really think to send the kids out of the classroom or to the principal or
Like a disciplinary
anything like
problem.
that. Yeah. So if there was any disciplinary issue, I kept the kids in the classroom. But there was one student who got mad at me. He was trying to be funny, so he kind of kicked my foot a little bit, and I was just so irritated. I was just like, look, I'm tired of talking, just go to the office. So he went to the office and he stayed all day. And do you know he came back with a chocolate covered strawberry? And he laughed and he knew that I like chocolate and I like strawberries. And I said, okay, so what happens when kids go to the office?
Right.
You know, so there was that component of it in that he came back and there was really no consequence except that I was asked later if I wanted to press charges.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. I mean, he was 9.
Wow.
He was a 9-year-old kid. So there's this element to where he's mocking me with his very juicy and delicious chocolate covered strawberry. And then there's the other piece where there was like no discipline, no accountability in between. And then I'm asked, do I want to press charges for assault?
You're like, well, which is it? Does it matter, or does it matter hugely, or does it not matter at all?
Right. And I said, well, you know, I can totally ruin this kid's life, or I can let him just get away with the fact that he's being disruptive and not listening. And he kicked me. He really kicked me. It didn't hurt or anything, but he knew what he was doing. And so it was then that I began to really formulate my thinking around student discipline and what are effective ways for young people to be held accountable, but also that I, as a teacher, would be held accountable for the culture of my classroom and for what happens, so that my students are motivated to do what they need to do. They're intrinsically and self-motivated to just be their best selves. So that's where
That's a good why.
started. I kind of had figured it out. We had circles every morning. We played games. Like, I really took time to build the culture of my classroom. And I didn't have the term restorative justice. I didn't know what any of those things were. And understanding that, you know, if the kids are happy and they're singing, we've got music playing, the learning is engaging and it's what they are really interested in, that they're going to be their best selves. Now, happy in the classroom, but that's its own little world. They still have to leave the safety and security of my room and go out into the real world, where they're exposed to violence, they're exposed to poverty, they're exposed to drugs, and all of these things that are coming at them. I mean, you've got these unfair school policies, unfair laws that definitely target kids and send them into the juvenile justice, into the adult justice systems.
You have used a phrase in conversation with me a few times that I had not heard before I met you either, the school to prison pipeline. That is a loaded phrase, my goodness. And it's a loaded phrase because it's a loaded situation. For viewers who might not have heard that phrase before, tell me what you mean by school to prison pipeline. What's happening with young people?
So the school to prison pipeline are policies and practices that first push kids out of the classroom and then from the classroom pushed out of school. Pretty simplistic explanation. For example, it's not that our kids don't misbehave, because I'm definitely not saying that, okay?
We can't stop that.
I cannot. But it's how we deal with the misbehavior. Do we look at the misbehavior as though it's in a way that criminalizes our kids? Or do we look at misbehavior in a way where we say, okay, kids do dumb things, they make mistakes, how can they learn from their mistakes? School to prison pipeline says criminalization, kick them out, get them out of the classroom now, send them away. Looking at it from a restorative perspective, how can we make things right? How can we use this in a way to build trust within our community? How can we use this in a way to build relationship within our community without sending and pushing the student out of school? And so zero tolerance policies, where no matter what the circumstances, no matter, you know, anything that's going on around an event, the student has to be suspended or expelled. They have to be pushed out. Those, actually, research says, I mean, it's just ineffective. It's totally ineffective, and it can oftentimes be biased because, you know, most reasons that kids get sent out are very subjective. And so disrespect to you is going to be totally different to me, what is disrespect. But then also, oftentimes, for something like disrespect or any of those subjective reasons that a student might be pushed out, Black kids get the harsher consequences. So you can have a student who is white to do the same thing, a student who is Black to do the same thing, and research shows over and over and over again that the Black student is going to have the harsher consequence. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about the school to prison pipeline. We know, you know, when a kid is suspended or expelled, they're sitting at home or they're out in the streets doing only the Lord knows what, but it's not productive for them. It is not conducive to any type of growth, and there's no processing of what they've done.
The message is, you're out.
You're just out. And I mean, again, research shows it increases their student involvement with, or student suspensions and expulsions increase student exposure to policing, student exposure to crime. So why would we do this? Why would we make a decision to suspend or expel a student instead of doing restorative justice?
Right. Habits and assumptions, false assumptions, rules that have just been around forever. What do we need to change? What tangible rules can a school change, for example? What are some of the projects that your disciplinary review team recommends?
Well, and I will say Metro Public Schools has a project going on. It's called Passages. And so they have, for the last 3 years, been looking at school policies, school culture, all of these things to move in a direction of restorative justice.
Great.
Or restorative practices, as they call it. They've got some restorative practices facilitators, Metro Public Schools does, and Gideon's Army. Years prior, I mean, we were pushing for that. And so finally, I think we're on the same road and going in the same direction. I'm really excited about where we're going. Wanted to say that. More so than even looking at specific, just the individual policies, I think what is most important in Metro Public Schools is looking at the overall culture of the classrooms, the culture of the schools, because when the culture changes, there will be a natural desire to shift the policy. And the policy can be informed by what is, the good that is happening in the classroom. I would say definitely looking at the actual culture of the classrooms, which Metro is doing. They did a whole school culture assessment on all the schools in Metro, and are looking at, what to do around that.
Let's look at some techniques that you use. I've heard you talk about circles, and I think you use maybe music and arts and other things. What are some physical techniques, some actual hands-on things that you do?
Yes. So in the spirit of being restorative and building culture and relationships that are positive, we definitely use circles, relationship building circles, healing circles. Any reason you can come together and sit in a circle, we definitely enjoy being in circle together. We use hip-hop therapy techniques, theater of the oppressed, music, games, and even in our organizing, like with the push for restorative justice, it was more of a positive campaign where we brought Metro Public School students together to tell their stories. Storytelling is very important, and they told their stories in different ways through rap, through singing, through dance, to compel people to see things in a different way. And I love the way that Gideon's Army integrates art into everything that we do.
My name is Diamond Lewis, and I'm 17 years old. So tonight we're here doing an event on a young girl whose dad is sick in the hospital, and she doesn't know what to do, so she's kind of like stuck. And she doesn't know how she's gonna take care of her siblings, pay the bill, feed her siblings. So she goes to her friend's house, and she asks them for ideas, and they come up with ideas. And one friend decides maybe she can rob the teacher that was being rude to her. Or she lost her job because they didn't want to give her any more hours because they didn't understand what she was going through. She felt like the teacher was no help, and she came off harsh. And when they approached the teacher and robbed her, she accidentally shot her. And she was like, "What did I just do? It wasn't supposed to go like that." Yes, we're gonna ask questions what could she would have done better that would have changed the situation, from her friends telling her that she can rob the teacher and that can get her some money, or from when she decides why would she quit her job, she should just tell her boss what's going on so they understand. And instead of telling the teacher that like that. Like maybe she can tell the teacher like what's going on at home, and maybe they can get some help from someone else in the school.
Being in a circle, you build up a relationship. You clear up all the misunderstanding that was brought into the situation, maybe even confusion, arguments, or anything he said, she said that was said in the circle.
Zero tolerance policy do not teach tolerance.
We can learn to talk out our problems instead of fight.
If adults help us and don't expel us.
I didn't understand what a girl did, and I fought him.
You didn't understand what I did, and you still expelled me.
That's not teaching me anything good.
Restorative justice is better than punishment.
What is it?
Read about it here.
Repair the harm.
Stop the school to prison pipeline.
Suspending me doesn't make me better at school.
This way isn't working.
We gotta change this.
Straight up punishment don't help nobody.
What does help?
Restorative justice, that's what.
It sounds fancy.
It's not.
You repair the harm from fighting.
You come together to talk.
You understand each other better.
You get better.
You get past it.
And get back to work.
Get back to school.
Get back to business.
You get back to being friends.
Yes, hold me responsible for what I do.
I get that.
But teach me how to do things better than I did before.
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 That's restorative justice.
What are some tangible things that folks in Gideon's Army or who would like to join your efforts now, what are some of the tangible things that are part of this work?
Gideon's Army brings high amounts of pressure for systemic change, but we couple that with high levels of support for that change. And so people can get involved by, being a part of grassroots organizing, which, from door knocking to phone calls to hosting events, all of those things, to being a part of some of the programs, the restorative justice programs. We have Heart Mentors, which stands for healing, empathy, accountability, respect, and togetherness. And I love the Heart Mentors program because it's whole class mentors that go into schools. We provide enough mentors for every single class.
Wow.
And during that time, we're facilitating circles, we're playing games, and the kids are doing activities that are teaching them about restorative justice, building their social emotional learning skills, helping them to develop skills for conflict management, conflict resolution, and relationship building in a way that's fun. So we can always use mentors, doing advocacy work, going with the kids. We have a Peace Builders program. It's kind of like participatory defense, but in the schools. So we're teaching students and parents how to advocate when they're being expelled or risking suspension, or even, some of the lighter infractions, just making sure that policies, the current policies, are being followed and everything. And even if the student was wrong, maybe we can find an alternative way to make things right that doesn't push the kid out of school.
So my friend, I have one last part for you. It's a short segment and it's my favorite. It's the speed round. Just like the game we played when we were kids, I'll ask you a question and the first thing that comes to your mind, just let it fly and we'll go on to the next one. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Let's go.
Speed round with Rashida Fatuga.
Oh, dear.
What's the hardest thing to make a young person understand?
I think sometimes the hardest thing to make a young person understand is that they're loved and they're valued, even in spaces where they are challenged to grow.
What's the hardest thing to make an adult understand?
That one's easy. That they aren't always right.
Yeah, that is hard.
Mm-hmm.
That is. What word do you say more than any other word to teenagers?
I probably say love a lot. Like, I love you, darling, I love you. Probably a lot, yes.
That's a good one. What is one significant change a viewer can make to help your cause?
To get on their feet and find a way to be active, but in a way that will also make them happy.
Roughly, how many young people have turned to you for help?
I can't even count. As a foster parent and a parent, I've taken kids in even outside of foster care. I probably had at least 100 kids just come through my house, not counting all the students that I've worked with, so I don't even know.
Hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly how many young people need help?
I won't say that they all need help, but they all need love and caring and understanding.
Grown-ups too.
Yes.
And last of all, it's the easy one. What is your website?
Our website is gideonsarmyunited.org.
Thank you for everything you do and for
Thank
talking to
you.
me.